All right. So can you all see my my screen here?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right. So today we're going to be spending a lot of time on the Aviation Weather Center page. Just kind of talk about all the different products that they have. We'll visit a few other ones, but this is going to be our main one. The URL for the site is aviationweather.gov. So if you just type that into your URL, it'll send you right there. And this is one of the main sites that you'll go to get weather information from. It has basically everything you need. We'll talk about another type of weather site that you can visit. That's for what we call weather briefings. But this has all the same information on it. I find it's just a lot easier to use than the other site. So to get started, let's just kind of talk about the different kinds of charts and maps and things that are on here. So there's going to be three main types of, actually four kind of. There's surface charts or surface analysis products. So these are going to be things like METARs, which are basically weather stations at airports, and that's how they're reported through METARs. There's something called an AWAS, which is another weather center product at an airport. There's a few others, but basically they cover small areas. They're usually located around airports, and they give you a good idea of what's happening locally. You can use them in conjunction with other stations. So if you look at several stations across Michigan, you can get a good picture of what's happening. But that's all they're really good for. They don't really give you much information past that. There's upper air products. So they're going to be charts that are, like there's surface winds, but then there's a wind chart that will give you winds. Like, let's take a look at it real quick here, actually. So this looks very intimidating. We'll talk about it later, but basically it gives you winds and temperatures at certain altitudes that reach into the upper atmosphere. There's also another type of product, which we'll talk about later, that gives you weather at high altitudes. And this weather is collected like with weather balloons. So they send a weather balloon up in the atmosphere. It has sensors and stuff on it, and it collects data and then sends it back down to us. It's also reported through like aircraft and stuff. There's also radar observations on this site, and you can look at individual stations, or you can look at other things. The radar is very helpful for flight planning. And I think all these sites here, for the most part, are all what we call NextRad, which is the newest generation of weather satellite. Our satellite station comes out of Marquette. They have a NextRad weather station there that sends out a radar signal. And because this is the only time we're going to talk about radars, I'll kind of go in a little bit more depth into what they are. So the radar map that comes up when you go to the page by default is basically a compilation of all the radar stations. Now, if you want to see an individual station, like you want to see what's happening in Grand Rapids, then you go down here to this single site radar and you click on the specific station that you want to see data from. So we want to see what's happening in Grand Rapids. We can click on GRR, which is the weather station there, and we can look at it. Looks like they may have had some data loss there, but so as we can see, this will show the NextRad data image for that station, and it'll show you some history behind it as well. The radar stations report a lot of different things. They report the base reflectivity or composite reflectivity, which is just the beam that's sent out and sent back. It gets a reading, and that reading is put on a map in colors based on the signal strength. And so heavier spots are indicated in red, and that indicates heavier precipitation. Also, radars can detect wind speeds. So you can get storm relative velocity. And this is indicated in red and green, where red and green are indicating whether the storm is moving away or from the radar station. This is very helpful for finding like tornadoes and stuff or rotating masses, because the green and the red, when they're close together, or you see red and green or green and red, that means that there's some sort of rotation going on, and stuff is moving back towards when it should be moving away, or vice versa. It also indicates how much precipitation has fallen. This is just calculated through the whole NextRad system. It has a lot of different capabilities, some that aren't even on here. So that's a little bit on radar images, which I'm sure you might be familiar with. The other thing that's on this site, this kind of fourth category, is what's called satellite data. There's a few different types of satellite data. We'll take a look at an actual. So this is a satellite image for the Minneapolis area, which includes Minnesota, Wisconsin, part of Michigan, and a few other states. And this data is transmitted from satellites that are in orbit, and they take pictures of the US. And this is kind of how you can get a big picture of like cloud coverage and stuff. It has a few different variety of products here. So you get like your visible, and you can actually see like an image of what the Earth looks like. You can see like water vapor levels, and then there's also infrared. And these products are very useful for finding clouds, fog, that kind of stuff. To be honest, though, I don't really use them a lot, except for maybe seeing where a storm is or where there might be low-lying clouds or something like that. But there's some other tools that'll help us with that. So those are the kind of the four main categories. So we have surface products, we have upper air products, radar, and satellite images. And between those comprise most of the site. So let's get into a little bit more of what is here. So besides aviationweather.gov, there are a few other sites that you can go to get weather information from. So to look at a few products in particular, we're going to go to 1-800-WX-BRIEF. Now, 1-800-WX-BRIEF is a website. This website is the only online website that you can get a briefing from. I'm going to log in here. Now, when I say weather briefing, what I'm talking about is before every flight, you are required by law to get a weather briefing. There are a few ways to do that. One is through 1-800-WXBRIEF.com. The other one is by calling 1-800-WX-BRIEF, which will send you to a person in a flight standards office or flight service station, and they will basically give you all the same information just over the phone. This way is kind of easier, and it has a few extra features which are nice. We'll talk about those. Yeah, let's look at a few things. So let's pull up a flight plan here and let's actually get a briefing. So you don't necessarily need to worry about how you got to this website or how to do any of the things I'm doing right now. We're just going to kind of look through the products and see what's available. So when you go into 1-800-WX-BRIEF to look at a flight plan or get flight plan information, what you have to do is you have to create a flight plan. I am not going to make this flight. Well, actually, let's do it so it's close to our area. So first off, you have to select an aircraft. Now, you don't have to save aircraft. However, in this website, they do allow you to save aircraft, which helps with like getting weight and balance information and other stuff later. So it's kind of nice. But I have a saved aircraft in here, which that's the N number. We'll pick flight rule. We're going to be flying VFR because we're not instrument rated. Don't worry about flight type yet. That'll come later. Don't worry about that. Departure airport will be Houghton Memorial Airport. We'll set our departure time. Let's see, what time is it right now? 7. We'll go with maybe 8 o'clock. So we'll go with 20 Zulu or 20 in military time, but this is an Eastern Standard Time, so, or Eastern Daylight Time, I mean. So it's really 8 o'clock. You can also do a minute from now, but we'll just enter it as 8 o'clock. Cruising speed. We'll do 115 since that's a cruising speed of a Cessna. We'll be cruising at, say, 5,000. We are going to be going direct as our route of flight. Our destination airport will be, let's go to Marquette, K.I. Sawyer. It's about 30 minutes. So 00 on the hour is 30 minutes. Again, don't really have to worry yet about how you fill this out. Fuel endurance is going to be 5 hours. 1 person on board. All right. I think that's all. I think I got everything. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to hit route brief. Oh, I missed a field. Invalid. Oh, I have to add a 0, I think. Let's see, what's the field look like? Nope. Let's see, let's pull up one of these flight plans and see what it looks like. Ah, that's why. I'm just going to modify this one instead because I don't feel like messing around with that one. All right, let's try this again. Perfect. Okay. So there are 3 different types of weather briefings you can get. There's a standard, abbreviated, and an outlook briefing. A standard briefing is what you'll get before you go flying. Now, you'll only be able to see a standard briefing or receive a standard briefing if your departure is less than 6 hours away. So if it's more than that, you won't be able to even see a standard briefing just because there's no reason to. So standard briefing, because we're departing at 8 o'clock, that's normally what we'd select. However, we're not going to select that because we want to see what other briefings there are. So abbreviated briefing, this is what you'd get if like you already got a standard briefing, but your flight was delayed or something, and you needed an update to your previous briefing. So you get an abbreviated briefing to kind of cover back what you think might have been updated or what was updated based on your last briefing. And lastly, there's an outlook briefing. This is for flights that are more than 6 hours away, and maybe the night before or a few days before, and you want to look at what the weather is going to be on the day of your flight. So those are the 3 types of briefings. We're going to look at a standard briefing now just to kind of see what is included in it. And so we're going to do a web briefing. And I'm going to switch screens because let's see here, New share. All right, so this is a standard briefing, and basically on the side here, you're gonna have the different products that you have to look over, and then it'll display what those products are here. So this is kind of like a table of contents, and whenever you go past an item, it'll check it off. And this is important because the FAA keeps track of these items, and this is the only reason that you have to go to this site in particular, because this logs that you looked at things, and you have to log that you looked at these things in order to file a actual flight plan. So first thing here is going to be a flight plan summary. So it'll give you a summary of your route. It'll display it here in a little window. It'll also display this kind of line, which is kind of like the region it's looking at for like any weather or anything like that. So there's a briefing type here. It tells you it's a standard briefing. It gives you a little bit more information. That's not really anything we care about. So the next thing is going to be any adverse conditions. So any adverse conditions. So through these adverse conditions, you'll have different tabs. So you have like any temporary flight restrictions. So like, I don't know, if for some reason the president or some other high level person was visiting Marquette, it would show up as a temporary flight restriction, or maybe they're doing like parachuting activities or something there. It would show up there. Any NOTAMs that would show up. So if an airport has a runway down or a taxiway down, it'll show up there. There are none. Convective sigmets and airmets. We will talk about what those are a little bit later, but there is an airmet Sierra out for this area. Also a airmet Zulu out. Nice. Okay. We will skip over airmets and we'll get to those later. Also included in this section are PIREP, which are pilot reports. There are also center weather advisories. So if a center like Chicago Center or something issued a weather advisory, that would appear here. Any severe weather, volcanic ash, whatever. Those are all included in adverse conditions. The next section is going to be a synopsis and current weather. So this will give you a surface chart. The surface chart displays the fronts, the pressure systems, troughs. It also displays the current radar image on top of it. So as you can see here, there was a cold front that just passed through this morning / this afternoon, and that produced a lot of rain, and you can see that rain on that frontal line there. These are really nice for just kind of getting a broad overview of what everything looks like, and you can make decisions on that, especially if you're going long distance. It's good to know where these things are. So METARs are also included here. We'll also talk about what METARs are a little bit later. These METARs, it'll give you the METAR of the destination, and it'll give you a METAR of your starting point. And if we had an actual longer route, it would probably give us METARs of stations along the way. But because these are the only 2 stations within our flight plan, this is what it's going to give us. So it will actually list both METARs. So these are the current conditions at the airports. These are very useful for kind of getting an overview of like, oh, is it raining there? Is it snowing? Is it windy? Where are the winds coming from? That kind of thing. PIREPs and AirEPs also would appear for those stations. However, there aren't any. So the next section is going to be forecasts. So forecasts are going to have like cloud coverage, TAFs, winds aloft, stuff that you would use to plan beyond what the conditions are right now. So cloud coverage charts are here. These are great for getting ceilings, so you can determine if you actually fly their VFR. Currently, these skies just went clear here, so be a perfect day. Otherwise, it looks like they were pretty low. So yeah, these are color indicated. So gray or no color, white is better. Blue, the dark blue is worse. You also get a chart here with it's kind of like a larger picture. This one's kind of like a more northeastern picture. This one is the whole U.S. and it gives you that for the entire U.S. You get a visibility, surface, and winds prediction chart. This chart predicts where the winds will be. These are surface winds, not winds aloft. So you have to take that into consideration. It also shows you where precipitation is and any air mets that are out. So these little triangles with the dots, this is indicating some rain. There is also ones for snow and thunderstorms and fog and all kinds of other symbols. But for now, just know that green is rain. It also will show you visibility. So over here, you can kind of see this like pink and blue. This is indicative of lower visibility. Whereas if it's white, it means it's greater than 5 miles. So over here, it's a little bit sketchy. As far as visibility goes, you might not be able to fly there depending on what you're doing. Also gives you TAFs. So these are like METARs, but they are forecast products. So they look the same, they read kind of the same, but they are for the future, not right now. So these are the TAFs for Houghton and for KI Sawyer. We'll also get into how to read those later. Winds aloft. So these are the winds that you'll be flying at, and here it gives you a nice chart and it highlights everything, whereas on aviationweather.gov, it will not do this. So this is a really nice part of the site, and very glad for this. So here it shows you your file altitude, and it shows you stations that have reported winds aloft along your route. And so you can use these to plan for wind correction angles and speed and fuel burn and that kind of stuff. Convective outlooks. These are great for, kind of getting an idea of how thunderstorms might develop over the next few days or the next few hours or whatever. So here we're under a general risk due to that cold front moving through. But as you can see, most of the U.S. there is no risk. So it'll also give you a nice little summary. You can read it. It's good to read it. It kind of gives you some basic information on what's happening. And it'll give you a few more days of outlook. So these are more NOTAMs. So these are NOTAMs for actual airports that you're landing at or taking off from. And here we can see that at Houghton, there's runway condition reports. Don't worry about these yet. We'll get there. Destination NOTAMs. Again, there are a few, but we won't worry about how to read those yet. En route NOTAMs. So these are things that might be happening. So if like a navigation aid was out of service, it would show up here, or like. And more NOTAMs. These are just advisories to pilots telling you things that you should know, things that have changed. There's a lot of them. Sometimes it can be a hassle to read through, but we're going to skip over them today. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Scroll down here. Then it gives you kind of this last little section here of like flow control, which is helpful for the centers and some other stuff, but we're going to kind of skip over that. And I think that's the last section here. Yes. They also give you UAS operating areas. There aren't any for this, but that's kind of helpful for knowing when there's drone activities. So as you can see, there's a lot of information in standard briefing. And so we're kind of going to look at each product in particular one by one now. So I'm going to share back this screen. And we're going to go back to the Aviation Weather Center. So as you saw, there was a lot of information there in a weather briefing. And you need to look at all of it before you go flying. It's helpful and it'll keep you safe from severe weather that might pop up. So let's take a look at METARs. So METARs are reported at individual stations. These stations are normally airports. However, there are occasions where they're not. Like up here in Copper Harbor, there is a weather station that reports a METAR. But normally we'll be looking at ones at airports. So let's take Houghton, for instance. So to get METAR data, you have to know the airport identification code, which is handy. This map has the airport identification code. But we'll take a look at KCMX, which is the airport identification for Houghton. You can look these up if you need to know what they are as well. We're going to look at a raw version first. All right, so this right here is a METAR. This is a reported data value from the station at Houghton. This is reported automatically, so there's not any human involvement in this at all. It's just sensors getting data and then it reports it. These are normally updated about every hour, sometimes more depending on if there's significant weather change between the hours. So these look very daunting to read. However, once you get more used to it, they become much easier to read. And so we'll just kind of go quickly over what each section is and what it means. So first, it starts off with the airport identification code. This is for Houghton, so it says KCMX. Then it'll give you the date and time that this observation was reported. So today is the 12th of October. So 12, and then it'll give you time. So 22:53 Zulu. And on the Aviation Weather Center page, it is also helpful down here at the bottom. It tells you all the different times. So currently it is 23:26 Zulu. So this report is about a half an hour old, which isn't too bad. Also, we can see that time in Eastern. So if you have trouble converting, you can just kind of look at those two. Auto means that this report was auto-generated without human interaction. The next part here is going to be winds. So these are the winds reported at the station, which are currently coming from 280. They are at 16 knots. They are gusting to 30 knots. And the KT is just indicative of it being measured in knots. The visibility is currently at 10 statute miles, which is the maximum that a station can report. Skies are clear, which just means that there are no clouds below 12,000 feet. That's as high as these can measure. So there's no clouds below 12,000 feet. In this case, there actually is no clouds. So that's kind of nice. This is the temperature and dew point. Now these are close together so that you can easily see when there might be fog forming. So when the temperature dew point spread is very close, that's indicative of like fog or low clouds forming close to the surface. So in this case, we can see the temperature is 10 Celsius and the dew point is 0.4 Celsius. So not a lot of danger of fog forming there. The altimeter is reported with the A, followed by the value in inches of mercury. So we see that the altimeter is 29.59 inches of mercury. The decimal is, you have to kind of add yourself. So 29.59 inches of mercury, which is below standard pressure of 29.92. And then at the end, it gives you remark statements. So sometimes these are helpful, sometimes they're not. They're just kind of added on. So remark AO2. AO2 just means that this station can discriminate between types of precipitation. So it can tell the difference between snow and it can tell the difference between rain, for instance. Tells you that the peak wind, this is very helpful for knowing how long ago the peak wind was. So if it was just very windy, maybe the wind has subsided now, then you can see, oh, well, this was, an hour ago, so it's not really relevant anymore or whatever. This is reported as the wind direction. So 280, and then it tells you the wind peak gust speed, so 32. And then it's followed by the time that happens, so 22:34. So it was almost an hour ago now. So maybe not relevant, but given the fact that it's still gusting 30, I would say that that's probably relevant. Next is going to give you sea level pressure. Now this value compared to this value is not indicated in inch of mercury. Rather, it is indicated in millibars. So you have to do some conversion. I usually just use the altimeter value here, 29.59, but to give it to you in millibars as well. So, and you have to add the 10-0. The 10-0 is assumed. So millibars is measured at, like, standard pressure is 1013.2. So here you have to add the 10-0. In this case, it would be 10-0, 2.5, I guess, would be the sea level pressure there. So you have to add that in. Temperature, dew point is indicated here more accurately. So you'll have temperature, you have the dew point. Right now it looks like dew point's 4.4. The temperature is exactly 10 Celsius. These are all indicated in Celsius, by the way. So yeah, for whatever it's worth, more accurate temperature data. There's more stuff that can appear in this remark section. And if you don't know what it is, usually there's a lot of numbers and data. There is a place to look it up, but usually that's all you'll need to know from that. Now that looks like a lot, and it looks like it's hard to read, which is true. It is. Luckily, they give us a decoded format. So if you do not like reading this, fine, you can read the decoded format, which is a lot easier. So just like the actual METAR, it'll tell you the station. It'll give you the actual METAR, and then it'll decode it for you. So here we can see the temperature is 10 degrees Celsius. It gives it to you in Fahrenheit. It tells you the dew point, which is 4.4, which is also indicated in Fahrenheit. It also gives you the relative humidity, which is 68%. So that's kind of nice. It gives us the pressure, which is 29.59 inches of mercury. Gives it to us in millibars, which is 1002.1. It'll give us the winds, 280 degrees at 18 miles an hour, which is 16 knots, which it also converts it to meters per second. It tells us the gust and converts it as well. Gives us the visibility, which is 10 or more, gives it in kilometers. Ceiling, at least 12,000 feet, like we said. Clear, it just means that there's no clouds below 12,000 feet, which in this case, it actually means that there are no clouds at all, but it doesn't have any way of knowing that. And then it will also give you all the different flags. So it was automated. It also happens that this $sign means that this data may or may not be accurate because the sensors might need some tweaking. But so that's a lot of information. It's kind of an information dump. I have a slide here, which I will show. Let's see here. Let's share that screen. Okay. So on this slide, it has different codes that you might see at an airport, METAR reporting station. So when it's actually precipitating, like, I don't think, let's see here. Let's take a look at this. So obviously right now it's not doing anything. However, if we go back 4 hours, we'll see that it indeed was raining. And so this slide is going to show us what the different codes mean for precipitation, and what those mean, because there is a lot of them. So on a METAR, it'll report different types of precipitation. The first indicator will be what the intensity is. So if it's light rain, it'll say minus RA. If it's moderate rain, it'll say RA. If it's heavy rain, it'll be plus RA. And if it's just rain happening in the vicinity of the airport, it'll say vicinity rain, or sometimes vicinity showers, be more accurate. The second descriptor here is going to be a modifier on this one. So it'll be minus followed by this if there is any. So for instance, blowing snow. So it would, let's say there's light blowing snow. It would be minus BL, and then it would be SN for snow. So these descriptors here will be modifiers on the precipitation type or other things. So you'll have an intensity indicator, a descriptor if it is applicable, and then you'll have the type of thing. So there's the drizzle. We covered these kind of last time, so I won't really go over them again, but there's your precipitation type followed by their code. There's also different types of like mist, smoke, any type of obscuration also has its own code. And like most of these symbols, they don't make a lot of sense as to what they are. So you might have to look them up sometimes if they're kind of rare, like volcanic ash or spray or something. And if there's tornadoes or other special types that don't really fit into these categories, there's also labels for those. Let's go back to here. All right. So in the METARs from a few hours ago, we can see these modifiers. So instead of just saying the cloud levels or whatever, we have this modifier in here for precipitation type. In fact, if we go back a few hours, we can see that it was actually heavy rain at the airport, and then it changed to light rain, and then eventually it went away. Now, these are always in the same spot, so you never really have to look for them, and they're the only ones that usually include a minus or a plus sign, so they're usually pretty easy to spot. Let's actually look at a METAR report from an airport that does have some weather right now. This looks like KERY. We're going to get the raw METAR data. So here at KERY, we can see time and date, auto-generated. See the winds are 300 at 11 knots, gusting to 15 knots. Visibility is currently 7 statute miles. And we can see that it is moderate rain, indicated by the lack of sign and then RA. Clouds are broken at 800 feet. And because this wasn't on the last one, these clouds are indicated where each one of these digits is in thousands of feet. So this last one would be hundreds, then thousands, then 10,000s. So there's different modifiers like broken, scattered is SCT, and you can read it. So it's kind of easy because they're all phonetic. So broken at 800 feet. So they're kind of low. It gives us another deck. So there's actually 2 cloud layers, one at 800 feet, and it also says that it's overcast at 1,200 feet. And so that's how cloud day is reported. If it's not clear, it'll give every cloud deck that you need to know. Temperature 10 Celsius, dew point is 9 Celsius, altimeter is 2960. So that's a lot of information on METARs. Does that kind of make sense? Is there anything that you want explained more? Sometimes I find it's easy when you're learning these. It takes a while to get used to it, to look at an airport's METAR data and look at the decoded format and then the raw format and just kind of go back and forth between the two. And that's kind of an easy way to to get what it's talking about. Once you're proficient, I find it's a lot easier to just read the straight METAR rather than read the decoded format because it's much longer. But yeah, so if you want kind of direction and kind of getting to learn these, because you will have to be able to read these proficiently, I would just start by looking at decoded and raw and kind of going back and forth until you get a strong grip on them. And so, yeah, that's my best advice. There's not a lot else to do, but just to kind of do it over and over. So, all right, that is a METAR. In case you didn't know, METAR's acronym stands for Aviation Routine Weather Report, which has nothing to do with METAR, but we call them METARs anyway. So that's kind of fun. But yeah. So the next type of report that we're going to look at is called a PIREP. These are pilot reports. They are current reports that are issued by pilots that are flying through the air, and these pilots then give information like icing and turbulence back to a flight service station, and then they issue them. So, so METARs before a flight. Normally, you would, you can look at METARs. If you're taking off the next hour, then you just look at the most current METAR. It's just whenever you're about to go up, I would take a look at them. They're always updated on the hour or before the hour, depending on if there's any significant weather changes. So, like, I don't know, if you're on the ramp ready to go, and most flight bases at airports also have computers, but you can get this on your phone. You can get this on other sources as well. And so basically, you would look at these right before you're going to take off. So I don't know, 15 minutes maybe, but it's helpful to kind of look at them before your flight too, just to kind of get a general idea. In fact, it brings up a great point that the METAR data that is given at a specific station is also available in other means. Most notably, you can call the station. So Houghton Airport has a number you can call, and this number will basically read you the METAR. If you want that number, I can give it to you later. But it just basically calls an automated station, and it gives you an automated message. That's what we call an AWOS. Then there's another one, or that's not an AWOS. That's called an ASOS, ASOS. Then the other one is an AWOS, AWOS. And that is the METAR, except you call it on the radio. So you tune into a radio frequency, and it'll give you the METAR information. And you're actually required to get the most up-to-date AWOS information before you fly at a controlled airport. So if you're flying into a controlled airport or out of a controlled airport, you're required to get that METAR information before you fly. So that is METARs. So yeah, let's take a look at PIREPs now. So PIREPs, like I said, are pilot reports. These are reported by pilots to people on the ground, and then they're put into computers and put on maps for us. So if we look at the current PIREP chart here, we can see that there's actually a lot around Chicago, which makes sense because there's a lot of airplanes there. So if we take a look at these, there's three types of airmets that you should know about. So, or not airmets, there's three types of PIREPs that you should know about. So sometimes they're issued for icing or turbulence or some type of visibility restriction or something like that. And so on a chart, you'll see them depicted by the different types. So here we can see that there are a lot of PIREP reports of turbulence. So turbulence was reported. This tells you the type. So this is a CRJ7. Tells you the observation time, what flight level they were flying at. It tells you what the PIREP was for. So in this case, it was for turbulence. It says it's light turbulence. And specifically it's CHOP. So it's a specific type of turbulence. There's other types. It looks like there's some pretty strong turbulence around Chicago. This indicated moderate to severe turbulence. which was reported by GLF5, which I'm imagining is a Gulfstream 500. And so there's some turbulence reports. There's also wind shear reports. So like we talked about in weather theory, there low level wind shear is rapid change in wind direction or speed. And so here we can see that there was low level wind shear indicated by SR20, which I'm imagining is a cirrus. And it tells you some information about this, but we'll get to how to read these in a second. There also are icing PIREPs, which I'm not seeing any right now. But they look like this. They have this little line, this little U with a line for how moderate or severe. They're also color coded. And any PIREPs that are negated after the fact are this little circle with a slash through it. So yeah. All right, let's take a look at PIREPs real quick and how to decode them. And we'll share that screen. All right. So this is a table that is useful for looking at PIREPs. So PIREPs have a few different things in them. One, they have a identifier of where the nearest location is, nearest airport weather station is to the PIREP location. They have whether it's a normal PIREP or an urgent PIREP. So low level wind shear, for instance, is an urgent PIREP, whereas maybe light chop is a routine PIREP. So those are the types of PIREPs they'll be indicated by UA or UUA. Next will be a slash and then an OV, and then it'll be followed by a location. So some examples are like slash OV, and then it'll give some like nav aid or a GPS location or something. And so you can use that to get location of where this was. However, on the pictorial map, it just shows you. So you don't really need to worry about what that is. Slash TM is the time, which is in UTC, 4 digits. So hour, minute. Slash FL is the flight level. So this will be indicated just like in the METARs in hundreds of feet. So hundreds, thousands, 10,000s. And sometimes they'll be indicated with flight levels. So for instance, or actually they'll always say FL, which stands for flight level. And flight level will be indicated as the METARs. So hundreds, thousands, 10,000. So for instance, when you're reading this slash FL, and then it'll give 095, that's 9,500 feet, slash FL 310 would be 31,000 feet. So that's kind of how we read those. Slash TP is the type of aircraft. So for instance, B727 is a Boeing 727. SR20 is a Cirrus. You just kind of have to be familiar with what aircrafts are called and how they're reported. So it's helpful for, like, let's say this said B747 and it was reporting heavy chop. You might be a little bit worried about what's going on up there as a smaller aircraft. So it's helpful to know what the weight is. Slash SK is sky cover. So if they're indicating, oh, it's clear up here, whereas the METAR reported it was broken at 800 feet or it was broken at 1,200 feet, well, then they can say, okay, well, the clouds are reported now from this aircraft at such and such a height. So that's kind of what that's useful for. Slash WX is the weather. So it's kind of like the flight visibility, precipitation, that sort of stuff. So that's how that's indicated. Air temperature slash TA is indicated in Celsius. Slash WV is wind. It's a direction and then the speed. So also it should be noted the direction here is indicated in magnetic heading, so magnetic north. So slash WV 270 45 knots would be wind at 270 45 knots, or 280 11 0 knots would be winds at 280 at 110 knots. So /TB is turbulence. So this is for those turbulence PIREPs. And then it'll list what type of turbulence there is. /IC is icing. So if there's any icing for icing PIREPs, it'll indicate what the type of icing is, which we'll get to the different types of icing later. But for instance, this /IC light LGT -MOD, so light to moderate, and then it gives you the type rime icing. Here /IC SEV CLR, so icing, severe, clear, so clear icing. So that's kind of how you read those. /RM is any other remarks that they made for that PIREP. So let's actually take a look at one real quick, and then we'll finish up here for today. So let's see. Let's take this one. Actually, yeah, let's take this one. So we can read this PIREP as the raw PIREP. Also, it gives the decoded format, but we'll go through this. So the nearest station is GRB, which is Green Bay. It tells us that this is a routine PIREP, UA. Tells us that the location, again, is Green Bay. Gives us /TM, which is the time. So 22:39 Zulu. /FL gives us the flight level that this occurred at. So this occurred at 37,000 feet. /TP is the type. So this was an Airbus A321. A321 is an Airbus A321. Just kind of have to know that sort of stuff. Just from, there's some good ways to learn that stuff if you don't know it, but it's just a memorization thing, really. /TB is going to be the turbulence. So we can see it's constant, light, with occasional, moderate, chop. And then there's nothing else reported. So this is for some sort of turbulence, occasional, moderate chop, but constant light chop, located at flight level 370. So not probably something we'd have to worry about, but it's good to know that it's out there and how to read those, especially when they're reported by smaller aircraft like Cessnas and Cirruses and stuff. So that's kind of how you read those. Oh, yes, I see. I was only displaying I thought I clicked back to that. Oh, is it displaying now? Okay, I see. Well, let me go over this again real quick, and then we'll be done. So, PIREP information. This is from Green Bay. It's a normal PIREP, so this is a routine PIREP indicated by UA instead of UUA. /OV, this is the location that was observed at, so Green Bay. /TM is the time, 22:39 Zulu. Gives us the height, so flight level 370 is 37,000 feet. The type is an A321, Airbus A321. And TV is the turbulence, so it's reporting turbulence. So we see constant turbulence. It's constant light turbulence with occasional moderate chop. So /TB, constant light, occasional moderate chop. That's kind of you read those. Again, the thing with PIREPs is you just have to be good at just reading them. Luckily, most PIREPs also have a decoded format, so that's kind of nice. You can get a list of all the PIREPs in a region. However, we won't do that right now, just for time's sake. But yeah, so that's a brief overview. Next time, we'll kind of continue with looking at different products. There are a lot more products. We'll look at mostly everything on this site eventually. So yeah, I would just suggest, looking over these and trying to get more familiar with reading metars and that kind of stuff for now. Otherwise, yeah, we'll continue with this stuff next week. So if you're going to be hanging out for the meeting coming at 8, then I'll see you there. Otherwise, I will see you next week at 7.